We are now going to start our session, and we're going to talk about LED. And I've got a great panel with me, and I'll let them introduce themselves. So, Stefan, over to you first.
Okay, I'm Stefan Maddox. I work with iMag Displays and Grey Matter Video. They're sister companies. We're a boutique video production company, and I'm their creative and development director, as well as I'm a filmmaker with a film company, Southside Films. We do narrative and documentary and music video and that kind of work.
Man with many hats.
Yes.
And Sebastian.
And I'm Sebastian Cannibal. I am technical sales consultant at Brompton Technology. We specialize in LED processing workflows. So a number of the virtual production studios that you see around the world are driven by our processing technology. I've been in virtual production for about 5 years, starting out sort of designing environments and designing sort of production pipelines around VP, and then VFX VP suit, and then technical director for an advertising production company.
Brilliant. Again, another man with many hats. Brilliant. Thanks for being here. Let's set the scene a little bit. You know, what is the current state of LED in the broadcasting industry, and what kind of trends are we seeing? Stefan, if I come to you on that one first. Yeah.
Sure. Obviously, the introduction of LED into broadcasting kind of gives everybody the ability to move away from other things such as chroma key, as I'm looking at a green screen over there, or obviously if there were, back in the day, studios with projection. I remember I was doing a walkthrough and I had a set designer telling me how he was at a studio back in the day when their studio was designed with the tunnel to have rear projection in their studio space. So it's kind of one of those things where as you've seen, with sustainability being a big issue, LED's kind of been pushed out in the forefront because of the fact that you can put anything on there, it can quickly switch over to anything that you're looking for. I mean, you're even seeing it crop up more and more in not only just in broadcast studio systems, but sporting events. Again, gone are the days where at sporting events there's just green signs. Or if you remember back in the day, anybody like baseball? I'm obviously American. Back in the day, we had roving signs that flipped in the stadiums. But now they have LED screens. Actually, I was scrolling Instagram because I like watching funny videos and dogs and cats, whatever. And there was a video of, I'm going to say his name wrong, Mbappe, yep. And there was someone had put up a video, and he was literally looking at a live LED screen in the middle of play, and there was a character reacting to him on the ground. So yeah, it just kind of gives a lot more flexibility, as well as if you're in the space in the room, you can see what's going on. Would be just, some of those advancements. How about yourself?
Yeah, and I'd say we're seeing LED being less of a passive part of a broadcast studio set, right? Previously it always used to be something in the background that nobody would really pay attention to. And LED now, because we're getting much higher resolution, much higher color fidelity, it plays a much more of an active part. So people are designing 3D environments, virtual sets around these LED walls, and we're just seeing it being used creatively and technically to a much greater level.
And what kind of growth are you seeing at Brompton at the moment?
Pretty enormous. I was talking to the BBC last week, and one of the creative directors, they were running this big test using a virtual studio environment within the Science Museum, and they've been thinking about running this test for 3 or 4 years. And the first thing he said to me is the inspiration for this came from The Mandalorian. And we have an enormous history in using LED within live events, broadcasts, and televised events applications. So being able to be part of that workflow was just really, really beneficial for us. And it gives us an opportunity to see what the end user wants to do.
And obviously there are benefits to LED, and we're going to talk about those later, but there are other options, aren't there? We should just quickly talk about those a little bit, Sebastian.
Yeah, you can go to your local B&Q, pick up some plywood and construct a set. That's definitely the traditional way of going by it. TFT screens in the background, been very widely used. Chroma key, I suppose, if you're looking at a true 3D virtual environment, is the other alternative. But kind of from my background and from speaking to technicians and creative directors, they don't like having to work within the limitations of a chroma key environment. So you have to light your scene in a really specific way. You have to light respecting the key, and you're limited to the props that you can use, what your participants can wear. I'd love to see everyone's green lanyard in front of a chroma key set right now.
Yeah, very good point. Talking about lighting there, and Stefan, coming over to you, how has LED really improved the visual accuracy and overall broadcast quality compared to some of those more traditional methods?
I mean, I would obviously, as a whole, it's obviously gotten a lot better. Previously, a lot of people would struggle with on LED. It would have been a hindrance because of like scan lines and all the different things. Again, are partnering with people like Brompton. This isn't a sales pitch, by the way. But that being said, we've used Brompton for 10 years. So we were using Brompton before, again, the virtual production craze. But again, scan lines used to be a thing, whereas now it is just something where you can actually use it effectively. It's been proven, especially since COVID, obviously, is when it really kind of got pushed to the forefront. And it just is. The advancement of the LED themselves, obviously color is a big thing. If you're in a lot of the type of technical circles we sit in, color is a huge issue with LED. Obviously, currently it's 3 diodes RGB. When you have that in your space, a lot of things people talk about is obviously the color on the skin coming off of it. What does that look like? They're continuing to advance in that. If you saw Rode just recently released, they have their own panel that has an amber diode in there as well. I think it's KinoFlow did a double amber diode. If you were at BSC, you heard them talking about the fact of doing the double amber to help with the skin tones of the LED coming off. I feel like it's just one of those technologies where it is going to be constantly advanced. Row also just came out with their Obsidian. Again, I'm not a Row rep, so if you want to go look at what LED people are doing, Epson's great. There's plenty of great brands out there. But yeah, it is just one of those technologies that's going to be constantly advanced and worked on to be able to kind of move forward in the collaboration of all of the other tools at play. Obviously, you're here to hear about LED. We're under no illusion. LED is one tool in the toolbox of many tool sets. There's also a plethora of ways to use LED. So yeah, we're just trying to just kind of cream the top of the cream for you on that one.
Yeah, the color is a big thing,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, when I started out building virtual sets, color wasn't really spoken about. Like we'd put a camera in front of a LED and we'd push a couple of buttons and hopefully it would all work out. But we're dealing with two elements that are really, really imperfect. We've got an LED, which is RGB output, and then we've got a camera bay pattern sensor. And the camera will have a spectral response that will vary from camera to camera, even vary wildly from brand to brand. So we need to make sure that that entire pipeline is closed and as accurate and as calibrated as possible.
And we've got one of your images that's just come up on screen.
Yeah, that was Sky Millbank that we've just recently completed. And this is a really, really good example of an area that was quite compact, that yet we've managed to open it up into a really, really large vista.
Yeah, that's great. So LED is obviously touted out there for its energy efficiencies. Talk us through some cases there, if you can, Sebastian.
Yeah, so I mean, like when everyone thinks of an LED volume, they think about this expansive 40-meter Mandalorian-style set, and that's typically not what we're dealing with in broadcast, right? So we're typically dealing with sets, not really substantially larger than this, but where we're able to develop them out and we're able to use things like virtual set extensions to make it appear to be a much larger space than it actually is. So you've got that element. You've also got this element where we can go from having a morning talk show to having a kids' afternoon show to having a hard-hitting program like panel show in the evening. So you can turn around these sets really, really quickly. So you're not wasting space. So increasing utilization of the footprint that you already have.
And anything to add there, Stefan?
I was going to say, if in your application, I know Sebastian and I were talking this morning, he was showing me how, was it for the Euro, they built a set in LA to kind of be able to be a virtual broadcast set for the Euros as going on, but that way they could keep the team in LA instead of flying everybody where they needed to go. I do realize if you're a location manager, that crushes your hopes and dreams of going to all of these exotic places when we're then just creating them in Glasgow or wherever. But travel is definitely another thing that's in the form of sustainability. Let alone, it's obviously Sebastian's actually the one that even said it to us in our pre-chat of, obviously when you're working in pre-built studios who also have a mindset of sustainability, it's also the question of where is the source power even coming from. I know we've operated in several studio spaces where they have solar power and all these other advances in being able to do that even with hybrid generators and cases and that kind of thing. So it is, it's obviously the tool itself, but it's also how you're getting the power to the tool. Obviously, it's, being made more efficiently. I know in times past, even 10 years ago, the power draw in an LED wall is very different to what the power draw is in now. We were just in a studio with, I think it was 300 square meters of panels. And they were like, well, you're going to need so much power to do that. And we were like, do you have a 63.3? Like, we actually don't need chunky power anymore. We can actually just distro off what we need. And even the studio, especially the gaffer, was like, wait, what? And so we're like, yeah, there's been some advancements. And again, it's just going to be one of those things where as we get better in focusing on sustainability, it's trying to figure out how can we make everything more energy efficient, even the big lights and the big LED panels.
Yeah, interesting. And what are some of the challenges that people are facing when they transition to LED, and how do they overcome those, Sebastian?
Yeah, how long do we have? Yeah, quite a few challenges on there. So, having the right people on set, having staff and crew that are aware of how to operate within an LED environment, what you can achieve, what you can't, that's a big thing. Working to the limitations of how the LED performs and what it can do, so working with the correct frame rates, working with the correct synchronization, and just operating at the correct distance, so avoiding things like moire patterning, which is just a physical thing that you can't get over.
And Stephen?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not always the LED, it's a lot of the time what's working within the pipeline itself of, obviously, once you start incorporating different workflows or different work tools, you then have to make sure all of your existing tools are working together. So, I mean, when you put in a wall that's now going to emit light, you're also now trying to figure out how do your current light work with that wall, let alone are they actually working together, working against each other, and then you incorporate your camera workflow into that as well. Obviously, we use the Brompton processors. I feel like I'm selling you more than you are, so well done, because it's not a sales pitch. But again, it's like we use the processor to help pull everything back in together, because like you're talking about, when it's frame rate, when it's sync, when it's gen locking it all together, you just have a lot of additional things now added into the process, let alone we haven't talked about the amount of pre-planning, the content making, the amount of people that have to be involved in making that decision of what is it going to look like, who all now has to work together. I would say sometimes it's not the tech that's the issue, it's actually the people that are the issue of helping people actually work across departments instead of just working within your own little confines. You've all been on sets. There's some sets where it's like, here's the lighting team, here's the camera team, here's the content team, here's the actors, like everybody kind of has their own little worlds. Hence, once it used to be called Video Village, all these different phrases that it kind of like inhibited the siloing of those departments. Whereas I do feel like once you're starting to incorporate things like LED and in-camera effects, you're now incorporating the understanding of like you have to actually figure out how to work together. It does mean you're going to be in larger meetings with more people and longer meetings where you're deciding how do we actually outwork this? Who does this also affect? Because when you're actually trying to work out a solid pipeline, you're also trying to figure out who's your unintended consequence, who's your collateral damage when this person decides we're doing this. We were working on one project and the executive producer said, I don't like this layout. I want it shorter and longer. And I said, okay, have you talked to your production designer? Have you talked with your content maker? Because now you're changing the pixel range of what you're operating in. Like what could have been on a set, less wood, more wood. Now it's like, oh no, wait, that your one little off comment is going to actually affect a lot of other people as well. So I would even say, yeah, the challenges cannot also not just be the tech involved, but then the people processes that need to be put in place to make it a win.
Yeah. And just going back to the tech that's involved, obviously the industry likes to cut its budgets. I'm right in thinking, that integration part is really quite important, and if you've got some cheaper style tech, maybe you might run into some issues there?
There are certainly limitations to using less expensive panels, less expensive processors. And my big thing is when I go onto set, I want things to be controllable and predictable. And that's kind of what I find with using certain combinations of equipment. So, usually Brompton processors and row absent LEDs. And as soon as you lose that element of predictability, then you do start getting scenarios where the virtual world stops aligning with the real world, and you get odd colors, and your props look completely different.
Well, I know, like on one of our situations, and this was 10 years ago maybe, so there's definitely been some advancements. But on one project, we went with a budget LED supplier because just didn't have the budget for the install. And what we didn't know is we get onto set, that production actually wanted, instead of being cabled in like we are to not have to deal with RF issues, they wanted to use radio mics. And all of a sudden, their whole spectrum was blown out of the water. And they're wondering, okay, what is this from? What is this from? We're ignoring it because it's just LED. What do we care? It's not audio. Until they start finally running the spectrum analyzer and realizing the LED wall is itself emitting a radio frequency, but like not just across the spectrum, because then they start doing scans and they're like, what is this going on? So then I'm like, I don't know. It's an LED wall, it's not audio. Who plugged it in? And so yeah, it would just be, like there are the things where you do when you kind of, don't do the demos, don't do the actual steps that you need to do because you're trying to save money, that you then walk into and you're like, oh, okay, how do we deal with this?
Yeah, always test. Yeah. Test a lot.
Yeah, and I was about to ask, how do you deal with it? What are there some solutions and strategies in place to overcome some of these challenges?
We try and make it as controllable as possible. So when it comes to sort of Brompton processors, we make sure that all the panels that are designed to work with our systems are calibrated to a specific level. And then if you feel like having more creative control over that, then you've got things like ability to upload lookup tables, ability to do 14-way color correction within the processor itself. And then, when it comes to sort of trying to fix a problem on set, it is just trying to get as many heads together as possible and crunch them.
Our big one being a kit supplier is just demos and tests. Whether we're doing it ourselves on site or we're doing it on site where it's going, it is as much as possible we're trying to just do demos and tests to ensure that we know it's going to work and not just wing it, figure it out.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And can you talk us through some of the operational efficiencies that you see when you implement LED?
Oh, massively, yeah. So, I mentioned earlier, the same set can be repurposed really, really quickly. So you're no longer repainting chroma key backgrounds, you're no longer changing flooring, you're no longer constructing sets. That's the biggest advantage for me. Going back to my commercial world, in 1 week we were able to do 16 different scenes for different clients, which would have been like unfathomable to do in a practical way. Also, just being able to work with the creative directors a bit more intuitively, right? They're not looking at a green screen and thinking, oh, right, what am I going to have at the end? And trying to do a rough live composite on the sets. They can see exactly what the environment's doing, exactly how it's reacting, and the talent prefer it as well. Actually, more so than that, working with children and virtual production environments or virtual studio environments is just a absolute blessing compared to being on green screen. They know exactly what's going on and they can react to it.
Stefan?
That was great.
Nothing further to add. Let's talk about future developments then, and talk us through what we can expect to see when it comes to LED.
I mean, if you're a person that's ever asked for LED, you're usually saying, what's the smallest pitch that we can get? I remember back in the day, if someone said that they had a 2-point whatever pitch, I could not believe it. How could that possibly be? Now we're down to 1.5. And again, like I said, they're now including the opportunity to have, even in the backdrop, the amber diode. Again, like all LED advancement, obviously your pixel pitch is now larger again because they've added in a fourth diodes. They can't make it, they can't do 4 diodes at 1.5 pitch. So they'll continue to just make the pixel smaller and also, increase how they come across. The advancement I wish that they would come out with is how to do away with moire. Because it's a physical issue. It's the grid on the LED with the camera sensor. there's nothing about it. Actually, it wasn't you. It was someone else I was talking to that was telling me someone shot a film camera with an LED back, like an LED wall, and they were like, it was amazing. There was no moire. As soon as they put the film into the editor,
I had that.
and once it went digital, moire appeared, and they were like, "What?"
And that was an expensive mistake.
Yeah. So I would, that would be one thing that surely somebody is trying to figure out, how do we move past the grid patterns in LED to be able to actually get to where there isn't a moire issue when you're dealing with camera. But yeah.
Anything you can share that's coming from Brompton?
Yeah.
I suppose I'm in a fortunate position of being able to see into the future a little bit. Yeah, so we've got a custom markers feature coming up, which I think there's going to be a video where you're able to overlay markers onto the LED so that your talent can, so your talent has something to aim towards, or you can overlay it on the floor so you can effectively have live cues that aren't visible to the camera. So there was a bit of a chat about this at Eurovision, how they use that for preparing the sets and like turning over the sets very, very quickly. It's one of my favourite features. We've got, I suppose, we're also going to get more pixels, better pixels, faster pixels. So more pixels, finer pixel pitch, better pixels, better color, faster pixels, higher frame rates.
I was going to say frame rate's definitely a thing, because obviously on the commercial side we get a lot of questions about slow-mo filming. But obviously currently all we can do is up to 250 frames, and so then it's just how do we now get up to the 1,000 frames that a lot of the commercial guys want to be able to shoot against. Do you want to talk about, because one thing that's been huge for us with the processors is those times where you want to blend chroma with actual LED content, and so like there's the, what do you call it, shadow?
Frame remapping.
Frame remapping.
Yes. Yeah, so this is quite, this is something that pretty much everyone in the VFX world has dealt with, that you shoot something and, or the virtual production world has dealt with, is you shoot something and then you have a wonderful creative director who says that background is exactly not what I wanted. Can you please change it? I had to deal with it myself on a music video 2.5 years ago. So we're now developing this technique where you can interleave a green frame. So frame A is your background, frame B is green, so you've always got that safety to go down a compositing pipeline. And that also opens up multi-camera workflows, and that kind of leads towards that faster, better pixel capability.
Because wouldn't that be in broadcast where it could be, like we just did a thing where they were doing one broadcast for UK, but then they needed to do a global broadcast, where couldn't there even be at some point in the future a chance where your one camera's picking up what they're able to see, whereas the other camera's picking up the green screen even, and actually being able to do that in a live broadcast scenario, so that one part of the world can see, like in a sporting event. I don't know, again, I'll use America, I know Premier League teams, but like in the US, if you have this city against this city, in this market, they obviously do the home team, but then in this market, they do the home team. So I would even wonder if, you get into those advancements where you're able to kind of play against both, but have less kit, like instead of it having to be two different kind of things.
That's great for the viewer as well.
Yeah.
And I'll admit to watching Eurovision, but great technology was used there. So tell me, what about skills and training? Are there courses, or is there any kind of education out there right now?
Way more than there was 4 years ago, definitely. Pretty much every university we speak to that specialise in film want to have a virtual production environment of some sort. There are lots of independently run courses as well. Final Pixel Academy, who are also here somewhere, they run their own sessions. Loads run by Disguise. The training market and the upskilling market is growing quite dramatically, and keeping up with the pace of technology that we, in a way that we want it to.
I was going to say, pretty much every manufacturer has training on their kit. A friend of mine's going to the Brompton training that they have going on next week. There's LED training to know what the panels, how the panels work, how they go together, what you can do on them. There's also, I was going to say, Production Futures is another one where they actually are helping you with training into production companies and into all the different manufacturers, all the different kind of, they span out into a lot. The other thing I would say is, all of you that are in tech know we're an apprentice type function. Like, we all learn from someone else. And for all of my friends that match me in the gray and white hair, I always called my friends in the gray and white hair saying, I run into this, tell me how to fix it, because that's how we do a lot of this. Like a lot of it, sure, there's manuals and there's trainings and everything else, but a lot of it is real world application. And I mean, like we're in WhatsApp groups, like Starting Pixels one, where it's like the amount of people that in that group will be like, I've run into this, how do I do this? And like everybody's happy to help each other. Like that's how we've actually survived as an industry, is it is engineers helping engineers going, when you run into this, try this. Now sometimes there's the rabbit holes of everybody has their preferred way of doing it, and that's great too. But at the end of the day, a lot of it is even just kind of like you just pair up with people and go, you have experience, I want to figure it out. I haven't met very many people that are like, no, don't ask me, I don't want to help. Like, who does that? I mean, like everybody's willing to kind of jump in and help each other. So
collaboration and sharing of knowledge.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we have some images to share, which we should really talk through in terms of case studies, because people need to see LED to make it real. So
I can start. This is ours. So this was a project we did with Inca Production. It was when Sky was releasing their Sky Glass. So what they were trying to show in this scenario was they wanted to show how everybody has their individual screens, but that coming together, everybody would have one big screen. This was a broadcast. So we actually did a pre-record for Sky, because they were afraid if in case it failed, they needed a backup. So we first started as a pre-record, but then on the day, this was actually a live broadcast with a live audience. So hence they used the LED screens, because what live audience wants to stare at a green screen while a presenter's doing a talk? And so then, what we had to do was design an automated system to where then the LED screens could come together. Thankfully, Rowe, who we were using, they have nice magnets within their panels, but before then, we actually had to create a magnet system so that when it came together slowly and then snapped together to reveal one image. Essentially this was a live broadcast that was then also, so it was pre-recorded, live to the room, live broadcast, and streamed out. But we were able to incorporate LED on set for this as an example of something we did with Sky. So that's what they walked into, was it was welcoming everybody in all the different languages, and everybody could kind of have a seat, because it was the whole idea of everybody's around the world in their room, so that's why there was no seats together. But then again, like I said, showing how everybody has an individual screen moving into a collective screen, trying to promote their product.
Well, thank you guys. Thanks for sharing all of that.
Pleasure.
And they will stick around. Brompton, I've got a stand just over here if you want to find out more and get your hands on with some of the LED there. But thank you guys, and see you all for the next session.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.